Assalamu alaikum. Barak alaikum shah. My name is Shaker, العيسى, founder of Recycle Kuwait. Been in the industry since 2003. And today in Recycle Kuwait, the main purpose of the program is to collect recyclables and take it to recycling plants to support the local manufacturers in Kuwait. So, this subject is about segregation, how to make it successful in Kuwait. So the topics are, we're going to discuss fun facts about Kuwait, what should be done. I'm going to tell you a little story. Then the current situation, how we can make segregation a success. So fun facts about Kuwait, demographics. We have around 4.3 million people in Kuwait. 70% are expatriates. And the literacy rate is considered very high in Kuwait. This is vital information, since usually when we talk about changing a country's mindset on how to recycle, you're always concerned about the literacy rate of the people. Now, the waste dump fields, we have around اللي احنا نسميهم محارق أو places where waste has been dumped. We have almost 16 to 18 dump sites in Kuwait. Usually they were sand quarries prior, دراكيل مالوت الرمل. They are 30 meters in height, and they're about they represent more than 10% of Kuwait land, 10 to 11%. That's very high. And we'll get to that later on, how this is significant. The waste generation, we generate around 3,000 tons a day, MSWs, municipal solid waste. Right now, obviously, it's all headed to Chebd, landfill, and there's, like I mentioned, 3 other sites that we use. Our waste generation per capita is 1.6 kilograms per person a day. And that's considered also one of the highest in the world. But the take out of this is how much of it can we make sustainable? How much of it can we get to, how much waste can we end up with? And should we end up with? And the idea is that we can make that, we can have 100% sustainable environment, meaning no waste landfill being dumped if we work on a plan. So what should be done? Nothing new. This has been used all over the world. And basically recycling, we should encourage for it to start with the owner, the user himself, the water bottle to be placed in a recycling plant. If you're cooking oil, you use that. If you're choosing to paper to go to the paper mills, glass goes to the glass recycling sites. That's how you get to start. But the initial part is to be able to take these waste and dump them into the proper waste containers that takes care of recycling. So where does that waste usually go? The MSWs in natural stage would end up in a semi-auto segregation. That's the proper path for it. So over there you have manual segregation as well as automated segregation. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if this is happening in Kuwait. I know they've invested in it, but I'm not sure if it's completed yet. The semi-automation, what happens at that point is they hand-pick easily whatever they can. They take the plastics, the glass out of the waste that's been thrown, the paper, and then the rest through automation, either by segregating it, chopping it, separating it again. Afterwards, what's left is a lot of food waste and a lot of recyclables embedded in it. And that's where you go through composting. And after the composting process happens, it's very easy to remove the compost, and then what you're left again is some recyclables, where again you can segregate them, and then what's left and can't be segregated, you should be sending to a waste-to-energy plant. Also, the waste-to-energy plant is on the table for Kuwait, but not yet implemented. So here's a little story. The purpose of the story is to really define how people put a value on money and how they value their own money, most of all. When I was working at a recycling plant back in 2003, I noticed that the manpower that worked in the heat and the sun were poorly dressed. They didn't have the safety shoes, they didn't have the uniforms, and it was a concern since we cut a lot of steel, we pick up a lot of material that was heavy, I mean, it was a dangerous place to be in without safety gear. They weren't used to wearing helmets, wearing glasses. They always had a scarf on next to gears that were mechanically automated that moved, and it could have created a problem. So one of the first things I did is educate them about safety, and then the second thing we did is provide them with safety equipment and instructions with that. One of the safety equipment is obviously a uniform. That's standard, that's clean, won't get attached anywhere, and safety shoes. I waited the first week, nobody was wearing them. Second week, I spoke to them again. I told them this is best for you guys to wear the safety shoes. It's really important. You're working with steel, you're working with heavy equipment. We have a lot of cars back and forth. You need the helmet. Still next week, no response from these people. Then I started doing more aggressive actions until they started wearing them. The point is, these people were keeping these shoes to resell, and they wouldn't want to use it for their own safety. As long as it was free, this is the thing, as long as it's in people's nature, if it was free and given to them, they can abuse it. It's an open-ended game for them. And that's the problem with man today or people today. Free services that are given to them are not appreciated as much. But once he has to pay for it with his own salary, then you'll see him appreciate that safety shoe, and he believes in it and he wears it every day. So what's our situation today? The situation is the free options is not really an option. The government of Kuwait tried as much as possible. I've seen bins for the last 6-7 years in community areas, like the co-ops, schools. They started with the caps, different colors, and they started with the 4 segregated bins that were blue, and they even provided segregated bins in front of houses, some of them in different locations like in Masila, Qurtuba, Dhahia, and it was interesting because after a week they were abused. These bins were abused. They were either stolen, used for home waste, but not for recycled. I want to clearly mention these bins were for recycled. The only ones that were readily used are the ones that were in community areas, but the problem was they were full and they were dirty, and so people avoided them as much as possible. And that's the problem with the situation we had. And today, if you notice, municipality picked up all these bins. You don't have any community bins left for recycling anymore. So the ones that they placed in front of these houses were also picked up. And now the people are left really with 2 options. And now the 2 options are really 2 types of services you get recycling. One is basically like the scientific center, who has big fish where you would bring in your water bottles and place them in. You have services like Recycle Kuwait, where you actually pay and they come and collect. And then you have services where you call people and they wait until you have a proper quantity and type, and then they would come pick up from your facility at that point. The 2 types really break down to either you are service-oriented business or entity, or you are commercial-oriented business or entity. And that's where we end up today because of the lack of support from the government, because of it's not working. So how do we make it successful? Well, first of all, to make segregation success, the government role is to make a lot of marketing and awareness. We have to start talking to the people and telling them not only what services are available in Kuwait, but what they should do and how they should do it. And this needs to start with the education of our children, the education of our friends and families, and this starts by leadership. The problems are when you go to a lot of government facilities, the people there are not as abiding to environmental laws themselves. You find that they're not using LED lights, they're not conserving the water themselves. They don't take the proper initiative to show the public that this is really a concern, a threat, and that's why the government needs to work on the leadership so that we can make segregation a success. But why would government do it? Or how can we make the government think about it? The government just thinks of it, the incentives they get. If we talked about the old waste dumps, there is grains, Libya, Jalib Shukh, you're talking about 6 billion KD worth of retail or land that they can sell alone. That's on its own as an incentive, just the income. And the medical bills, the amount of people that get sick because you have a plastic that's left in the ocean, fish that eat the plastic, and then you're eating these plastics from the fish. That's creating, making cancerous, that's creating cancer in people that we should be obviously avoiding. And if they just concentrate on these two incentives alone, I think it would be to their benefit to move towards making more effort into segregating and helping promote recycling in Kuwait. Now, for people, the incentive for them is very clear. The solution needs to be believed in. People need to believe in the solution. They need to see something that's easy, reliable, and sustainable, and clean. They want to know that it's going to the right place. One of the most frequent questions I keep asked is, how do we know where, if I gave you the waste, how do we know where it's going to end up? How do I know it's not going to get dumped? So for people, the incentive, it's very clear that you should give them something that they could believe in. And then it's easy for them to join whatever system you place. And also there is new solutions out there that Kuwait doesn't really use. And that is what's it's called a reverse vending machine. I mentioned EcoVend brand. It can take the glass bottle, plastic bottles, aluminum. Now these reverse vending machines have a nice story or history to them. If you place them in any market, you'll find the market ending up with increased business. If you had them in the middle of like any mall, for example, and you have that mall supporting this recycling vending machine, then you'll end up with these machines, with these companies, these are the people, they will end up going to the machine, and that whatever coupon they get is to support the businesses around them. So you end up with a cycle there. And that's how you end up with making segregation a success. So please recycle and encourage sustainability. Thank you.